Flushing turns into a total zoo when the Yanks, Giants, Jets, and Mets all share Shea Stadium. The first time 4 pro sports teams had ever done it.
This is one of those interesting scenarios here where you have Shea Stadium, and we all remember Shea Stadium kind of being a dump those last few years. But for a while, Shea Stadium was not just the center of New York City sports, but you can make the argument sports in this country. You have 4 teams playing here, first time ever in U.S. sports history where you have 4 teams sharing the same stadium, and none of them are really that good, to be honest with you. The Mets were 82-70. The Yankees were kind of on the upswing at this point, but they only had 83 wins. They didn't make the playoffs. The Giants were unforgettable. The Jets weren't that good.
I think the interesting thing that you want to remember about this deal at Shea is that the Jets and the Mets called Shea Stadium home. The Yankees and the Giants never belonged there. They were out of place to begin with, and all it did was enhance the sour taste in their fans' mouths because their teams weren't that good anyway. And on top of that, they're playing where the Jets and the Mets played.
The Mets, the Yankees that year, the Giants and the Jets, they waved one flag, the white flag, because they were all so horrible. They basically rolled over and folded for all of their adversaries that came into Shea Stadium. Maybe the worst decision ever made to put all 4 teams in that stadium because it was miserable. I didn't care which fan you were. It was just a miserable year.
It's a terrible idea. You want to have, really, best case scenarios, you have your own stadium for your own team. I think it's good to have identities for your own teams, and that identity, in large part, comes from your stadium. That year was crazy, and that field was, just a mess.
The one I'm really curious about here is the groundskeeper. I mean, this guy must have been pulling his hair out here, having to care for the turf after 4 teams running around on it for 4 different seasons. That's got to be crazy. That's a lot of grass seed right there.
At the Yankees, the beloved Bobby Mercer, before the season, had been traded for Bonds. Well, that was the year that Bonds was the Yankees' big offensive weapon. That's also the year when Catfish Hunter came in and wound up winning over 20 games as a pitcher. That was kind of fun to watch, but going to a Yankees game at Shea, man, did that turn your stomach. Worse than any of the bad food they sold at the concession stands.
The last thing you'd ever want is to have your hated rival and hated neighbor take inhabitants in your home field, and that's what happened for the Mets in 1975. Fortunately for the Mets in 1975, the Yankees weren't very good and didn't win a World Series.
It wasn't a good idea for them to share with the Yankees because that's hallowed ground. I believe by the Yankees planting their spikes, their wretched spikes on our soil, they imposed a curse on us, which lasts until this day.
This was a horrible situation. This was the Giants of Craig Morton, of Joe Dawkins, who was a better pass receiver out of the backfield than he was a running back, of Walker Gillette, who was a washed-up St. Louis Cardinal as a wide receiver and wound up being the leading Giants receiver in those days. The days of the ugly Discotheque NY helmet that the Giants wore. It was absolutely dreadful. That offense was miserable. It was the final year of Ron Johnson and Spider Lockhart, of a day gone by when at least they were lovable Giants. This was just a bad Giants team that played at Shea.
Hey, actually, it was like demolition derby outside in the parking lot. They had the junkyards, Jamaica Salvage, where they used to shred the old cars with human bodies in it from organized crime. So I understand it threw you off your game.